Yeah, I mean, I think the first one I would say, and this is especially for, interns and GAs is, get close with the people on your staff, the people that you're working for, right? Like these are the people that are probably going to be teaching you most of the things that you're going to learn. And most of the things you're probably going to carry with you in the long run, right? And so just kind of, like I said, get close with them, learn some of their styles, take some stuff from it and take some stuff that you're like, hey, I'm never going to do that. And I think that's okay.
What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? On today's episode, we have Keegan Smith. I'm very excited to have you on the show. And we initially met, it must have been 3 years ago now, I believe, when you came up here with Georgia Southern women's basketball. And we got to introduce ourselves. And you're an extremely personable guy. So I'm very excited to have you on the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, man. Hey, it's a pleasure to be on here. Like we talked about a little bit earlier ago, this is my first podcast, so wouldn't want to be doing it with anybody else.
Look at that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
Because I always try to make people feel comfortable and feel like we can just have a good conversation. So,
Yes, sir.
all right. Well, can you just break it down? Can you tell us the story of Keegan Smith and then what's brought you to Georgia Southern?
Yeah, so I was actually introduced to strength and conditioning at a pretty young age. I grew up playing high school football in the state of Alabama, and so I'm sure, as most people know, it's pretty big time football over that way. So as early as seventh grade, they had us in the weight room. I have some memories of being 12, 13 years old. Working hard to try to get into the 500-pound club is a thing that we did. Where it was clean, squat, and bench, I think, but only the biggest and baddest were doing it at the time. So, all the way through high school, just always being in a weight room and got really familiar with, at the very least, just the core lifts. So, just being comfortable in the weight room was something that I kind of noticed early on, something that came a little natural to me. And then fast forward to, I ended up going to the University of Alabama as an exercise science student. And, I think later on, this was around my junior year, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. I think at the time I was thinking PT, and then kind of looked at the coursework and what some of that stuff consisted of and quickly turned away. And so, I'm a really big sports guy. So I knew I wanted to be involved in sports in some capacity. And started thinking a little bit about strength and conditioning. And I was actually talking to a buddy of mine one day. He was a punter on the football team at Bama. He was actually a former teammate of mine from high school, but I mentioned to him I might want to be a strength coach one day, and he kind of mentioned how Coach Cochran and his staff, use a lot of interns and a lot of students to kind of help them out with their operations. So, he offered to get me connected with him, and so going into my senior year, I was able to get connected with Coach Cochran and them, and got that opportunity, and so I did that for the entirety of my senior year over there, and was an awesome experience. We didn't win a national championship that year. We did win the SEC, but I think just being around that championship culture and kind of hitting the ground running full speed in terms of strength and conditioning and seeing at a really high level. So once I graduated, I knew I wanted to continue to be in the field. So started to look for graduate assistant opportunities. And then another cool little story, the same guy that got me connected with Coach Cochran ends up transferring to Jacksonville State to play ball over there. And so I reach out to him and I just asked to get me connected with his strength staff over there. And so ended up talking with them and got lucky enough to get offered a graduate assistant position, which was a really good experience because it was, a lot of help with the football team, but we also had Olympic sports come through our weight room as well. So I got to, assist with some of the bigger teams like, baseball, volleyball, those type teams. And then I actually got the opportunity to, program and oversee some smaller teams for myself as well. And so through that experience, I started to learn a little bit that I might be more of an Olympic style type of guy, like on the Olympic side of things. So um, around the time I was about to graduate from grad school, an opportunity at Louisiana Tech opened up with on the Olympic side of things with Coach Blake Tallis. Got connected with him and and he ended up bringing me out there with him. So helped him out with everything basketball, and then kind of the same thing, got to program and oversee for some of my own teams as well. Loved my time there. It was awesome, but it was only a part-time gig. You always hear part-time gig, full-time hours. So from day one, Blake was really good though, because from day one he said, start applying for jobs, start applying for your full-time job. I'm glad you're here to help me, but my job is to get you to a full-time spot. And so, man, I probably applied to 100 jobs in my time there and went through multiple different interview processes, but it was really good practice and good experience, and just getting to get connected within the field, and talk to other coaches and get a lot of interview practice. And so um, eventually was able to land, the full-time gig over at it's a small D1 basketball school in Virginia called Longwood University, but got the gig over there with women's basketball and some other teams as well. But that's when I kind of got to start running my own basketball team. So did that over there, spent about a little over a year there, and then started missing home a little bit. I always jokingly would tell the people in Virginia this, but I don't believe that Virginia is truly the South, at least the part that I was in. And so I'm like, I'm a Southern boy. I was missing home a little bit. And, my guy Blake from La Tech actually reached out to me one day and kind of told me about an opportunity down here at Georgia Southern, got me connected with them. And after talking with, my current director here, Kim, it was a no-brainer, to come back down here. So got the opportunity here. I'm going on year 2 now, or just finished up year 2. But yeah, over here working with women's basketball and women's tennis. And, we have a great staff over here. We have our own Olympic staff of 6. And so we operate out of 2 different weight rooms. We just opened up a brand new weight room over in our new basketball arena. So it's really nice to have such a big staff, because we're not, spread super thin. We each have 2 or 3 teams, and we're able to really hone in on those. But yeah, man.
We used you guys as an example when we were trying to get a third strength coach hired. I remember reaching out to you and asking you how many you guys had on staff, and because we were trying to get a third full-time strength coach, and then we reached out and said, hey man, like Georgia Southern's got 6 guys on staff right now. So if this is our rival, we've got to make sure that we're competing with them. So you guys helped us out a little bit on that front. So that's always great. I want to go back to the early strength and conditioning, because this is actually a conversation I was just having yesterday with one of our guys who was in here lifting. Like, that time is so informative. And I feel like when you are, like you said, in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, you can either learn to love or absolutely hate the weight room. And it's all based off of the coaches that you had. Like, what were some of the things that your coaches did that helped foster your love for the weight room and help understand that this is a place for building you up, not breaking you down?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think any of the guys that were running our lifts were probably truly certified or true strength coaches. It was just our football coaches doing it. But I think one thing they did really well was just really emphasize how important what we were doing in the weight room was going to translate out to the field. And I think for us too, like the school I was at the time, they were winning state championships like back to back. And so like we would go watch the older guys lift, and like those guys are superstars to us, right? And so just kind of watching them and seeing what they were doing, and how much time and effort they were putting into the weight room. Like for us, it was a no-brainer, to get in there and get after it. And like I can remember in 7th grade, us kind of self-leading it a little bit and getting on to guys that maybe weren't, doing as much as they should have been. And so yeah, I think just once again, like being in that kind of like I talked about at Alabama, like just being in a championship culture from starting in 7th grade, like we knew it was the only option was to lift.
Yeah, and it truly does make a difference, because I remember in the sport that I was doing at the time was shot put, right? And so for me, ultimately, like that was a direct input and output. Like how much work I put into technique obviously helped with how far I was throwing the shot put, but at the same time, like ultimately how much work I was doing in the weight room, the stronger I got, the further I could throw it. And it was very easy to see those things. And like you said, having guys to look up to, like we had an older guy, Dan, I can't remember his last name right now. I was going to name drop it, but I can't remember anymore. But he was, deadlifting like 315, which at the time when you're in 8th grade, you're like, this is the strongest human being on the planet. Like, I can't believe he's actually deadlifting 315. Right. And so he got me excited in the lifting, and it just made the world of difference. But I just think it's so funny that, we're sitting here as two strength coaches talking about this, and the weight room is something we gravitated to so early on, and it obviously changed kind of the trajectory of our careers. And I don't know if this is the same for you, and I guess this is my next question. Like, when I was in school, like you said, I also didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a strength coach or not, but when I ultimately looked at what I enjoy in life and what I wanted to, see myself doing for the next 40 some odd years, it was going to be in a weight room, and it was being a part of it. Was it the same case for you, kind of going back to your good memories of the weight room and growing up in that development type of area?
Yeah, no, for sure. And like I said, I think first, like I said, I'm a huge sports guy, right? And so
Yeah.
I love the weight room. I love coaching. I love being in the weight room. But my favorite part is getting to be a part of teams. Getting to be there on game day and be at practices and travel with the teams. Like, I just love the culture of being a part of a team. And so
Mm.
for me, like, I think we have the best job in the world. The fact that, we get to wake up on, in the Sun Belt Wednesdays or Thursdays and Saturdays and go watch a game and sit on the sideline and cheer our teams on, So for me, I think first and foremost, it comes to just being part of a team, just being around sports. Like, sports are everything to me. So.
Yeah, it's so cool, right? That we just get to watch games, and that's what I tell people all the time. It's just like, yeah, I literally, like you said, I just wake up, we'll stretch some, guys out, and then we'll get a pregame meal, and then there's nothing I can do during the game. Maybe a guy cramps up and I can help out a little bit there, but outside of that, like I'm handing out Gatorade cups at the halftime, whatever it is. But I'm just enjoying, and you get to watch a game, and you have a little bit more emotional investment in it. Like when the Jets lose, obviously I'm upset because I'm a Jets fan, right? But when, App State loses, I've been supporting this team and I've been a part of this team. And so when they lose, it really bothers me. But when they win, it's really, really exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt. And I think too, like you said, just winning. Winning is awesome. And I think I hate losing more than I like winning. But I think it just goes back to, like I talked about, in high school and then being at Alabama, just like I want to win a championship just as bad as these athletes do. And I've been lucky enough to put 5 rings on my fingers in just 7 years, right? And so that's one thing I really preach to my teams too is like winning a championship doesn't happen in a day. It's a culture driven thing, and it's something that you have to be a part of day in and day out, and it's a mindset. So
I think you had a really unique experience too, right? Because you go to Alabama, and it's funny that you say like, well, we didn't win the national championship that year, right? And it's just like, this is a program that obviously is built around so much success that it's just like, if you don't win the national championship, it's like an off year, right? You still won the SEC, and I know every other school in the SEC besides maybe Georgia would kill just to win the SEC that year, right? And so it's just so funny to see that, but to be a part of a program like that, I'm sure taught you a ton about culture development and what it really takes to be successful. Is that right?
oh, absolutely, man. Like I can remember um like my first week being there. And this is just a little story about how just like alpha mentality around the entire place, from coaches all the way down to interns, to us. And so, man, I can remember my first week being there. I think it was a Friday, and we had just finished a really hard conditioning session out on the track. Um, and I'm not going to name drop these 2 guys, but both of these guys are starters in the NFL to this day. And probably about 10 yards away from me, I look up and these dudes are just throwing hands, just going after. And I was like, whoa. And then these are big guys, like no shorter than 6'5" and no lighter than 250. So, I mean, I'm watching 2 grown men throw hands, and I'm like, whoa, like this is real deal. This is real deal stuff. But, it was not of any hatred or anything. They were just, they want to win. They want to win
Yeah.
championships. And, it's a dog eat dog mentality. And, there's 5 stars all over the place fighting for spots on the field. And, they want to make it to the NFL. And that, like I said, they want to make sure that they're winning championships year in and year out. So I think just, man, like you can feel it in the air when you walk into the weight room or walk out onto the practice field, just, the tension, but in a good way, because people are
Mm.
ready to put in the work. And then, you see someone like Nick Saban walking around, and like I said, you can feel the tension, but it's in a really good way.
Yeah, it's a presence that there's, success has been had here, and success is going to continue to be had here, which is exciting. How was it working for Scott Cochran? Because I mean, whenever I talk about, it's so funny. I'll have a couple of my players send me videos, right? And like it'll be like Scott Cochran, like the initial one, and the biggest one is him always when he's screaming on the field. Then he goes and does the weight room tour, and he talks about the 45s, and like he puts spinners on it. And I'm like, yeah, that's the video that like convinced me that strength and conditioning would be a sick job. Like that was the first ever video I saw about it, and it was what opened my eyes to this career. How was it working for somebody who was so revolutionary for a lot of younger strength coaches?
Yeah, no, I mean it was awesome. I remember going into it thinking like obviously you're like probably almost a little scared of him, because he's a really intense guy when he's coaching and when he's out on the floor, but just a really good, genuine dude. Like he knows how to tone it down when he needs to. Like his door was usually always open, and we could just pop in and just talk shop a little with him. He was a really good dude, really genuine, easy to talk to. Like I said, obviously on the floor and on the field, he's super intense guy, really loud guy, but he was real good to us. So
That's awesome. And seriously, I've heard nothing but great stories about him too, right? And like everybody always says, never meet your heroes. And I'm like, that's one I'd like to meet. That he'd make a difference for me a little bit, I think so. And so you talk about kind of like the air being different in an environment like Alabama. How do you bring that to your teams? What are the things that you try to take with you to help them understand that, it does take a specific culture to win and to be continually successful year after year?
yeah, so I mean, one of the biggest things that I'll preach, and like I mentioned earlier, first thing I emphasize to them, like, hey, I want to win a championship just as bad as you do, right?
Hmm.
So it's not like a me versus you thing. We're in this thing together, and so like I said, just preaching to them that you're not just going to walk out, during conference tournament and win a championship out of nowhere, right? Like it starts in the summer, it starts on day one, and it's a day in and day out process. It's not going to happen in one day. You're not just going to randomly show up and win a championship. And sometimes it might take multiple years, but just I think too, you know, specifically in the weight room, being able to identify some leaders or, maybe even if there's already a captain on the team that kind of share the similar mindset as you and kind of, grabbing them by the hand and saying, hey, like, let's preach this to the rest of the team. It can't just be me. I need you helping me with this process as well.
And what do those talks with those leaders look like? Do you take them aside after the lift? Do maybe before lift, you come in and say, hey, this is what I really want to focus on today. How do you implement that with those players?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of both, whether it be, I mean, because usually those leaders are the ones that are going to come in a little early, right? And so I think getting close with them and then just having, personal conversations with them a little bit before the lift and maybe talking a little bit about, if they're coming from practice, how was practice and what do we need to do to maybe ramp up the energy a little bit, or if it was a great practice, how can we continue that into the lift? And then, let's say we have a bad day in the weight room, just kind of pulling that leader to the side and just talking with them and saying, hey, like, what can we do? What can we do different? How can we, motivate your teammates a little bit more? Or even if they had a bad day, talking with them and saying, hey, like, I expect more out of you. I need you to be more of a leader. I know you're maybe having a rough day, but your teammates are relying on you to kind of lead them through the tough times.
Hmm. I love the collaborative aspect of it, right? Because I do feel like a lot of times with athletes, they can almost see it as a you versus them, right? Like the lift is like this punishment or something that you're going to do, and if it's particularly difficult that day, or I'm a big believer in the back squat, right? We love using back squat a ton, and so guys get sick of it, and they're tired of it, and they're like, well, why do we have to keep squatting? Why do we have to keep doing these things? And it's just like, obviously, I'm not going to give you anything that I think would hurt you, because my job is directly dependent on seeing you succeed. But at the same time, like you said, I want to win just as much as you do, and we're in this together. And so it's not a me giving you something hard just because I like looking at people doing difficult things and struggling to do those things. Sometimes it's a little fun, but at the end of the day, I want to see you succeed. So I love the collaborative piece to it. How do you, let's say a player first gets on campus and you're trying to get them bought into that process of it's us together. What are the conversations you have with them? What are the things that you do to help them understand that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is just building a personal relationship with them. I think especially number one on the basketball side of things, but number two in this day, the transfer portal,
Mm.
where like you may have an athlete come in that has worked with four different strength coaches already in their career, right? And so I think just trying to maybe stand out a little bit compared to their other coaches and just say, hey, like I truly am here to get to know you as a person. And like we talked about, like I'm here to collaborate with you and win as well. Right. And so I think just, getting them to buy in and getting them to trust in you always starts with, a genuine personal relationship with them. So just little small things like every day when my athletes come in, I'll have them do a quick foam roll session and I'll just take 10 seconds, just to either a handshake or a fist bump, just have a quick conversation with them about anything other than basketball or lifting, like maybe it's class, maybe it's family, maybe it's music, whatever it is. And I think those small conversations over time can kind of build up into a bigger relationship. But I think just showing them that you genuinely care about them as a person and not just as an athlete, they can kind of start to trust and buy in a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point too with the transfer portal. It has become a little bit more transactional. It's become a little bit more, like what can you do for me, and then what can we, do for your career too. And I've even heard of some programs saying that they're just going to lean 100% into that and literally just say, if you come here, we're going to do this for you for a year, and then maybe you transfer after that, and that's fine, but we're going to help you get these results, and then as a strength coach, I'm going to help you put on this muscle or mass or whatever it may be that your specific goals are. And then, we know that you're probably going to be out of here at the end of the year. So that's it, and once it becomes transactional like that, I think it loses a little bit of the excitement of coming in every day and the joy of it. Because like you said, like it's cool that we get to go see the games. There's no doubt about that. And I love that. But like at the end of the day, it's all about actually getting to know these people and having a solid relationship with them. Like, and that's what's way more exciting for me. I don't know if it's the same for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like you said, I mean, I think just being able to see them graduate or being able to see like your former athletes get jobs is awesome. And I do think we're losing a little bit of that with the transfer portal. But at the end of the day, we get most of these kids only for a year. I mean, not even in the basketball world, maybe 8 months, right? And so just
Mm-hmm.
really maximizing our time with them from a physical development, but also making sure we're helping them develop as people as well.
Yeah, and the graduation piece is so interesting to me too. Like, how are these people graduating? Like the guys who are going to 4 schools in 4 years. Like, there's no way you're getting a degree. Like, I can't believe it.
No, and see, we're really lucky here. We have a program called Apex, which kind of collaborates with the student athletes and helps them get prepped up for when they do graduate. And so I think if some of those ones are graduating with maybe more of a basic degree, we're at least expose them a little bit to career opportunities and kind of things beyond athletics. So
Yeah, yeah, and that stuff is so important too because there's certain guys on the team like who you love to death, and then they're like, "What's your degree in?" Like rec management. I'm like, "Okay, what do you want to do with rec management, man?" Like, and he's like, "Well, I don't know, hopefully play basketball." And I'm like, "What?" Like, there's got to be next steps. So that's an awesome program. I really like that you guys have that. Yeah. And so you mentioned at Jacksonville State, kind of understanding, and obviously your career mostly started off in football, and first of all, actually, the punter, he's got to be in your wedding, man, or something with the amount of connections he gave you to first start off with Alabama and Jacksonville State.
man, hey, I owe that guy my whole career.
That's awesome. Um, but you worked with football at both, and then obviously when you're at Jacksonville State, started leaning a little bit more towards Olympic sports. What drew you to Olympic sports? What was kind of the pull for you to switch over from football?
I think for me, it was just more of my style of coaching. Like I think, working for a guy like Scott Cochran early on, and this was all of us interns, like we felt like we had to be, Scott Cochran Jr. and bring that
Mm.
intensity and bring that he would call it juice, and I do think in the football world there is a place for that, right? Like I think you probably have to be somewhat of a version of that in the football world. Whether it's genuine or not, I think a lot of head football coaches and a lot of players are probably looking for that. But I don't want to call it laid back, but more like just not as intense, not as much screaming and yelling. And don't get me wrong, like if I need to yell, if I need to be intense, obviously I will with my teams. But like if I try to go into a women's basketball lift coaching like Scott Cochran, I don't think it would get very far. So obviously, you're going to adjust your coaching styles a little bit depending on what team you're working with specifically. But I think it just kind of paired up a little bit better with my style of coaching. And also on top of that, like I'm a huge football guy, and so being able to on Sundays, watch NFL, or even on the back end of Saturdays, watch a little bit of football and not have to really worry about anything else because I'm not involved with any football team, right? Like I'm over on the Olympic sides coaching these guys and girls up, and then I get to watch my football on the weekend. So
That's awesome. No, and I agree. Like the laid back style to me is more enduring, I would say, right? When I think about how I could come into work every single day. Because I remember when I was working with football, it was the same thing. It was you have to be this super juiced up guy. You have to be overly excited, and really, really have a ton of energy, which is fine if you can do that. But I remember like leaving at the end of the day and I was exhausted. And then it was like, okay, can I really do 40 years of this every single day? Probably not, right? And so that's the same thing that pulled me over too. But with you having your relationship based coaching too and really trying to develop these relationships, I feel like it makes it a little bit easier versus, okay, Keegan's always the hype guy. He's the guy who is a little bit more laid back, but we can have a little bit more of a conversation as well too. Has that been your experience? Does it make it easier to have those relationships and develop them?
yeah, absolutely. And I think too, just the numbers too, right? When you're looking at
Yeah.
100 and nowadays 105 football guys versus my 13 basketball girls, like that's only 13 relationships that I have to create, and I can make them a lot more genuine versus I kind of know 105 guys, but I get to really, really know these 13 girls. And so like I'm very relationship driven, and being able to, like I said, have those genuine relationships with 13 people versus a somewhat relationship with 105. So I think it definitely helps.
Yeah, that's one of the big things I always bring up too when people ask me why basketball is it's we got 15 guys on the team. You can know 15 guys way better than you could 120, right? It's literally, I mean, because I remember Tennessee carried 120, and that was 10 times the amount that we have on one team right now. Like, and obviously you have your position groups and you get close with them, but like I'd rather when we go out and see a full team play, I'd rather know everybody's story and know what everybody's going through. I think it just makes it way more fun.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, you talked about your coaching style, and I'm always curious about coaches' principles as well too. Like, what are some things that really drive you as a coach? And obviously, you preached to your team, understanding that we're together. But what are some of your core principles that you really hang your hat on as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the first one is, just making sure that we're drilling the details. And this is something I'll always tell our teams, early on in the summer, or even if I'm talking, with recruits, is like, we're not going to do anything crazy out of this world. I'm going to keep it really, really simple with the programming, but I need you to really make sure that we're attacking the details of that simplicity. Right. And so, whether it's how we set up the weight room or how we clean or our squat technique, or how we warm up. Like I said, it's never going to be anything that's overwhelming to you, but we really got to make sure that we're drilling the details in those things. So I definitely say that's one. Um, I think another one is, I like to create an athlete led environment. And that's what we touched on a little bit ago with, just kind of early on trying to, identify your leaders in the weight room. Or like I said, if you already have a captain on the team, I think that helps as well. But just really setting them up to be able to, lead their own environment. Obviously, I'm here to coach you and here to program for you and make sure everybody's all good. But I want them to sometimes set the tone. Like I want them to sometimes run the warm up if possible. Like I don't want it to just be them listening to me talk to them all the time or coach them up all the time. Like I want them to coach each other up. I want them to lead themselves through the warm ups or lead their teammates through the warm ups. So I think just creating an athlete led environment, I think it helps with a little bit of buy in as well. Um, you know, letting them pick the music or letting them get some sort of selection with, let's say it's a squat day and we're in the off season. Well, if you want a back squat or front squat, I'll leave it up to you. Like whatever I can get the most out of you with, let's do it. So I think things like that. And then I think the last one for me is just, trying to enhance the student athlete experience as much as possible. I want the athletes to enjoy their time with me. I get it that, every athlete doesn't love the weight room, but I'll tell my athletes this sometimes. It's like, I don't need you to love the weight room, but I do need you to be in love with the process of getting better. And sometimes that involves, being in the weight room and doing stuff with us. So, um, whatever I can do to, enhance their experience, like without them, my job doesn't even exist. Right. So kind of just knowing the role of, I'm here to, support my head coaches in any way possible. And then, like I said, support these athletes as much as possible as well.
And so the athlete experience is always so interesting to me, right? Because I get lost in this. This is like a personal fault of mine, right? Is I get hung up on the wins and losses because like you said, I hate losing more than I love winning, right? And so, but there's a lot of emotion tied to each of those two. How do you not get lost in that emotion piece? And what I've noticed is as I gain more experience, I'm not getting better at it. I'm actually getting worse because then I've seen teams work in the summer and I know, okay, this is not how winning teams act. And so then I get more upset. And then I feel like it can kind of ding into the experience a little bit and make it just not as high quality. Like, how do you as a coach not get lost in that and really keep the athlete experience as the main thing?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think like you said, obviously wins and losses are big time for us, but I think just not letting them see that emotion, right? Like if we take a tough loss, like don't let them see it on your face. Don't let them see you, if they're watching back on film, don't let them see you slouch into your chair after a bad play. Keep positive body language, on the outside that they can see. And obviously it's okay to be upset about it, but just don't let them see it. Um, and I think just constantly reminding yourself, like I mentioned earlier, like why I'm here. I'm here because of them. Without them, my job doesn't exist, right? And so, just like I said, keeping it where I'm reminding myself that I'm here to service them, and not making it about myself and not taking things personal, but just remembering that I'm here to enhance their experience.
That's a great reminder, and I appreciate it because I love to make things about myself. If we lose, it's because of me, right? It's
Right.
something that I did, right? Except for all the other factors that go into it, and we're obviously just a small percentage of it. And so obviously the player led workouts for me are always the most beneficial, and that's where we see the most out of our athletes. But what do you do in situations where you don't necessarily have a vocal leader for the team? Like I think about past teams we've had, like where we've had two guys who were really, really good lead by example kind of guys. But if you were to ask them to give a motivational speech before a game, it'd be like, all right, guys, let's go do our thing. And then that's what all they've got. What do you do in those situations? How do you kind of try to foster? I guess this is my question. Do you try to foster a little bit more vocal leadership from those guys? Do you try to identify maybe younger guys who could potentially be good leaders, or do you really just hang their hat on that leading by example?
Yeah, I mean, I like to just really let them be who they are as a person, right? And so I think we could try to tweak some things about them, but I wouldn't want to force an athlete that is more of a lead by example person to have to be a vocal leader. But, like you said, if we are in a situation where, I'm kind of noticing, all right, we don't really have a vocal leader in here, but we do have a few that can lead by example. I think just small things like using them to help demo exercises or just kind of, not saying it out loud, but really emphasizing to the team, like, hey, I'm really leaning into this person and I'm giving them a lot of love and I'm spending a lot of time, helping them improve. Like maybe you should do what they're doing, And so I think athletes like they notice everything, right? So if they notice, hey, he keeps telling her a good job. Like, what's she over there doing? And you look over and kind of see how she's working, and it'll kind of rub off on you a little bit. So, I don't think you necessarily have to force, one of those leaders to end up being a vocal leader, but just kind of leaning into what they're good at and what they're able to help you with, in developing your culture and kind of going from there.
Yeah, I love to do the clap it up. I'll be like, hey, everybody, eyes on CJ right now or something, because CJ is one of our best lead by example guys. It's like eyes on CJ. Look at, hey, that's a great RDL that he's got right there. Like clap it up for CJ, right? And like it kind of becomes funny, and like every once in a while we'll do a little joke about like, Mike grabbed a snack before lift, and he usually does it. Clap it up for Mike, right? Like and everybody claps, and like everybody will laugh a little bit, but like it's an easy way to kind of highlight and just say, hey, this person's doing a good job, and like you said, like if you care about doing a good job, you can understand that there's certain habits or things that you do that get celebrated, and you might get a clap it up, which might be funny, and it might be a little awkward, and that's why I love doing it too, because usually the people like get super awkward, especially when it's like they're in the middle of a lift and I'm like, hey, everybody eyes on CJ, right? And they get a little nervous or whatever, but it's always fun for me to celebrate those things. I think it makes it very, very exciting. And then you talk about the details too. Like I think details are so important. I think I got lost in that early on in my career. I kind of had a couple years where I didn't really worry about those things so much. Like when you say details, like and like you said, it's leaving the weight room or how you set up the weight room? Like, is it logos up? Like, how do you explain that to the athletes? Because even myself as a coach, I've gotten lost in those things where it's like, does this stuff really matter? Like, how do you explain the importance of that to those athletes?
Yeah, so I tell them, I'm like, this isn't military style stuff. This is just about being an adult and taking care of the things that we're providing to you and that you're lucky enough to have as an athlete. So yeah, like we'll do logos up, and that's more of like an entire department thing, on the dumbbells and stuff. But like I'll just really preach to them, leave it better than you found it. I want whatever team comes in here after us to say, hey, that team picks up really well, and they're leaving the weight room in a good spot. And so, we never want to be the team that everyone kind of rolls their eyes at and says, oh, like they're always doing stuff the wrong way or they're always leaving a mess. So yeah, I really like to preach, leave it better than you found it. And I think most of that is probably just a little bit of my OCD too. Like if I see them leaving it the wrong way, it's going to drive me crazy, and they know that. So, yeah, just preaching to them, take care of the nice things that you have, and be grateful for them. So, like another thing too, and I think this goes into the athlete led environment is, and this is probably controversial to what some other coaches might say, but I don't do any sort of setup in the weight room. Like from day one, I teach the athletes how to set up certain exercises that we're going to do, and I teach them to take pride in it. So, obviously there's some things that I'll get together that we'll need for the day, but I like to let them set the room up, and I think they enjoy it. So
I love that, dude. I'm so happy I found because I don't set up anything either ever. To me, it's the biggest waste of time for me to do a job for 15 athletes that they could all do one at a time, right? And easily knock it out. And then it also gives them a lot more autonomy. And my big thing too is when we have recruits in, I'll tell them, if you don't know how to train yourself, if you don't know after you leave here how to do your own workouts or how to set things up yourself, then it's a failure on me. And so if I do every single thing for them, then, how are they ultimately going to know what they need to do? Or like, they're never going to know what height the RFE pad needed to be, or, how did I set up the bands for this specific lift? And I agree. It's controversial because some coaches love the setup, and I swear they get there way too early and they say this is my reflective time or something like that. I hate setting up. It's my least favorite thing in the world to do. So I'm so glad I found you.
yeah, I mean, and I think you touched on it where it's like I could do it for 30 minutes, or they could get it done in less than a minute. You know,
Yes, yes.
and I think if it's going to take you some time, on the front end to show them exactly how you want it done, but it just helps you out on the back end for the rest of the year.
I blasted one of my former interns. He was calling me, and we were talking. And he said, we got a lift coming up in 45 minutes. I got to start setting up. I said, 45 minutes? I think you're wasting 45 minutes of your day setting up for a lift, and everybody else can knock this out right away. Like, what are we doing here? It's a waste of time. So I do appreciate that. And so obviously you've had a lot of experience in different places, obviously going from Alabama to Jacksonville State, to Louisiana Tech, then Longwood, now Georgia Southern. Like, you've been to a lot of different places and you've seen a lot of things. We have a lot of young strength coach listeners, or maybe even younger sports professionals. What is some advice that you would impart to these coaches as they're beginning their careers, besides not setting up, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one I would say, and this is especially for interns and GAs, is get close with the people on your staff. The people that you're working for, right? Like these are the people that are probably going to be teaching you most of the things that you're going to learn, and most of the things you're probably going to carry with you in the long run, right? And so just kind of, like I said, get close with them, learn some of their styles, take some stuff from it, and take some stuff that you're like, hey, I'm never going to do that, and I think that's okay. And I think too, so early on in your career, like these are the people that are probably going to be on your shorter reference list because you are so early on in your career, right? So make sure that these people are, saying good things about you. If when that time does come for a job to call them about you, and so I think kind of working outward on that would be, get connected with strength coaches, even just within your conference, right? Like kind of like you and I did, or like
Mm.
get to know, the strength coach that works the same sport as you, around the conference. Like especially in basketball, we're seeing each other twice a year, whoever the other strength coach is, right? And so just kind of build those relationships. Um, I mean, yeah, sometimes even 3 times a year at the conference championship, right? And
Yep.
so, yeah, I think just connecting with coaches that may have a job that you want one day, and um, you know, we say cold calls, but I think these days it's just DMs and text messages, and so, but just not being afraid to reach out to somebody that you may look up to, or a job that you may end up wanting one day, and just kind of asking them about their journey and some of the things that they're doing. Going to conferences, and if you see somebody wearing a logo that you want to wear one day, go talk to them. Ask them how they got there, and get connected with them. And I think to add to the relationship piece is also get close with other people around athletics. Like some of the closest relationships that I have from some of these other schools are people that weren't strength coaches. Like they worked in other departments. I think especially at like here at the mid-major level, where like most of these assistant coaches are pretty young, and they're going to be head coaches one day, right? And so just making sure that you're getting close with them, get close with the equipment staff, get close with the ATs, because the carousel of jobs in athletics is never ending, right? And so just being able to be connected at so many different places through so many different departments is really important, I think. And then I think another really big one too, especially in the day of the transfer portal, where you're meeting so many different athletes, throughout the years. As we know, most of the workers in athletics are former athletes themselves, right? So like we're currently training the next generation of people working in athletics, and so just it could be 20 years from now, and your former point guard might be an associate AD somewhere, and he might call you up, and just making sure that they're carrying your name in a good way wherever they go. And I think the last couple would be kind of what we touched on, is like, don't take things personal and don't make things about yourself, right? Like, I think it's so easy for us as strength coaches to take things personal, right? Like if an athlete doesn't love lifting or doesn't love a specific lift, like it doesn't mean they don't like you. They probably just don't like lifting, or if a coach, cancels a lift one day, it's not like coach looked at the team and said, hey, I hate Keegan, we're not going to go lift today. Like there's probably a reason behind it, and that's all right. And obviously we want to, emphasize how important it is for them to come in each time that we have a scheduled session, but just don't take it personal, and be able to adapt from things like that.
Those are seriously some awesome advice points, and I think there's a lot of really important nuggets in there. The one I like that you really brought up is people kind of neglecting the assistant coaches, right? And they always get so concerned about the head coaches, and the assistant coaches they're all just future head coaches, at some point, seriously. And the only thing I'd add to that too is a lot of people like to almost complain about the head coach to assistant coaches sometimes. And it's just like, okay, if that person's thinking back to, okay, do I want to hire Connor down the line? And he was complaining about the head coach all the time to me. There's no way I'm going to hire him because I know it's not going to work out. Right. And so I think it's just so important, like you said, to develop those relationships even outside of the actual sport, and like the equipment guys, like you talk about, right? Like, we whenever we have a new equipment guy start, I always buy him a bottle of whatever liquor they like the most, right? And then for some reason, my gear always happens to have a little something extra, or ends up making sure that it's all here on time. And it's just like, it just makes it easier for yourself when you get to know people outside of just strength and conditioning too, and it unsilos the profession a little bit too, because I feel like it can be so crowded, and sometimes people think, oh, strength coaches just want to talk to other strength coaches.
Yeah, and I think too, just like with job hunts and job searches, right? Like if you know a guy at another school, and even if he's not in strength and conditioning, like you're able to get a little bit of insight on some jobs or some things that might be
Yeah.
going on. So, obviously we're doing it for the actual relationship, but also being able to help you in your career as well.
Yeah, that's huge. And people like to not talk about the career. So I appreciate you talking about it, because it is important, right? That is a realistic part of every single school that you ever go to, is that there is always another job, and so understanding how to best set yourself up for success is a real deal. So I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Well, Keegan, man, I really appreciate you, man. It's been awesome to get to speak with you on the podcast. Obviously, we've spoken outside of it, so I'm glad everybody else gets to hear you speak too. I hope it was a smooth ride for your first podcast. If it wasn't, don't tell me that. If anybody wants to follow you on social media, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, and that's just Keegs, Keegs .Smith. Yeah, that's probably about it.
Awesome. There we go. Well, seriously, Keegan, thank you so much, man.
Hey, I appreciate it. Like I said, this was my first one, and wouldn't want to do it with anybody else. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be on here with you today, Connor.
I'm glad that statement stayed the same from the end to the beginning there. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate
Yes, sir.
that.
Thanks for hanging tight with me.
Absolutely. Thank you.